Hello and welcome to Get Up and Game. My name is Josh, and it has been a long time since we did one of these, 140 days to be exact. But Fantasy Flight Games has finally announced what's coming next for Marvel Champions, and next is the apropos word because it is Next Evolution, an X-Force themed campaign expansion. Now, this was announced yesterday, and within about 3 hours of the article being out, there were about 8 preview videos on YouTube already, and they are all fantastic. So I imagine you have already seen quite a few of these, so thank you for joining me here. But even though everything's probably already been said, I'm really hyped, I'm really excited, so I still want to give my take on things. I still want to go through these cards and talk about them with everybody. So let's just dive right in. Now, I don't think it was too big of a surprise that the box was X-Force themed. If you're a fan of the lore, Mr. Sinister showing up at the end of the first campaign story was a big hint, plus having the Forge ally come in the earlier wave, mentioning the X-Force trait was also a big hint that they were coming eventually. And it's really cool to see that they're here. Now, if you don't know much about X-Force in the comics, they are mutants the same as the X-Men, but they are more of a strike force, in that they seek out potential threats and stop them before they can happen. They're a little more violent, a little more willing to kill, and they definitely have a different flavor than the average X-Men team. So let's just start off by talking about the leader of the X-Force, Cable. You'll see here the alter ego Nathan Summers. If that name sounds familiar, he is the son of Scott Summers, Cyclops. And if you're wondering why he seems so much older than Cyclops, it's because he is a time traveler from the future, and he is just one small piece of the Summers family tree that is both ridiculous and wonderful. But we see he has a 4 recovery, which is always nice to see, 12 hit points, which is very nice to see. He's a mutant and a soldier. Seeing a lot of chatter online, hoping to get some soldier support. They haven't revealed anything yet, but I wouldn't be surprised a bit if at least one pack in this cycle has a couple cards, similar to how we got a couple cards for Genius and a couple cards for the 14 hit points heroes. So I'm expecting to see some soldier support. Now, right off the bat, his ability is quite an eye grabber because it says you may include player side schemes from any aspect in your deck. And as a longtime fan of the Lord of the Rings card game, this was something I was expecting to see at some point, and I'm very, very glad to see that it has arrived. It was a mechanic they introduced about halfway through that game's life where the player could play quests and go on those, and now Marvel has those as well, and it's just so cool. I'm so glad they're here, and I hope they continue beyond just this cycle. Now he has a setup ability, Soldier X. Search your deck and discard pile for a player side scheme and put it into play, so you get to go into your deck and immediately find one and play it, which is just absolutely awesome. You're always going to be able to start with the one that you want in play, though there is a particular one I'm guessing you're mostly always going to start with. So let's take a look at his hero side. He is Cable, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense. Solo player, always love seeing that. Still a soldier, and he has the X-Force trait. And that's one thing that is incredibly important. You know, we just got 8 X-Men and a cycle filled with supports for the X-Men. But the X-Force are a completely separate team with a completely separate trait. So many of those cards that were designed to support the X-Men aren't going to help the X-Force. Now, the good news, go back to his alter ego, he is a mutant. And so is the other hero they've shown in this box, Domino. And of course, they all will be mutants. So if we pop over to Hall of Heroes real quick, you're still going to be able to use many of the supports that they released for the X-Men because many of them were focused on mutants. You'll still be able to use X-Mansion. You could still potentially get the discount on people like Colossus and Angel and Storm. Utopia is not going to do you any good. You could still use the Danger Room if you have X-Men allies. You could still use Cerebro if you fill your deck with X-Men allies. But the ones that are going to still be really great are things like Weapon X that let you search for a hero-specific card by flipping cards off your deck. And X-Men Instruction and Mutant Education, particularly the Mutant Education. This is a card I have been using a lot lately. I absolutely love this card. And I'm so glad that the X-Force characters are going to continue to be able to use this, especially when we talk about Domino. I feel like this is a card I'm going to want in her deck all the time. You'll also still be able to use your X-Gene and Moira McTaggart. So you do lose out on some of the X-Men support, but a lot of it will still work for the X-Force. Now, going back to his abilities here, so he's got a great stat line, and his ability is after he defeats a side scheme, you get to ready him, limit once per phase. And it's interesting that it's once per phase, because you don't typically think about defeating side schemes in the villain phase, but it is theoretically possible. And all of the heroes that have built-in readying have just been a lot of fun, and with a great stat line here, and you're going to see here in a second, it gets even better. That's going to be a very, very useful ability, especially for solo play. He's going to be incredibly versatile and easy to use. So I'm very, very excited about that. So let's take a look at his first card here. So here we get a look at a player side scheme. This one is 0 cost. It's unique, and all the ones that we've seen so far are unique. This is the Technovirus Purge. Cable is plagued with a future disease technovirus thingy, and has victory 0. Characters other than Cable cannot remove threat from Technovirus Purge. While Technovirus Purge is in the victory display, Nathan Summers and Cable gain the psionic trait, and Cable gets +1 thwart, +1 attack, and +1 defense. It takes 5 threat to remove. Now, you're going to be able to search for this with your alter ego ability and start with this in play. And then once you remove 5 threat, you're going to be a 3/3/3 character for the rest of the game with access to the psionic cards. This is so incredibly powerful, and he has a built-in ready. So good. We don't have any other heroes that are printed 3/3/3. So right off the bat, you can tell they are not messing around. Yeah, you got to remove 5 threat, but I don't see that being hard. The one thing that's very interesting about introducing these player side schemes, and we've seen them in all the aspects, but obviously when you think about side schemes, you think about Justice. So Justice is automatically getting a boost with this mechanism. The other aspects will certainly be able to benefit from them, but there's just no denying that it's going to be better for Justice. So once he gets rid of that, he's going to be a 3/3/3 with the psionic trait, but you'll see that this also leads to other benefits. Here we'll take a look at the leadership player side scheme they've revealed. This one costs 1. It is unique, call for backup, victory 0. So it's not going to contribute to any of the campaigns as far as trying to get victory points, but it will remove itself from the game and go to the victory display, which is going to have some fun implications for villains like Hela, in addition to boosting some of the other player side of things. This one is when defeated, each player may search their deck and discard pile for an ally and put it into play. So for 1, and then removing 3 threat per player. So in solo, he's just going to have to exhaust once to thwart this after he gets the other one into the victory display. And then you can just go into your deck and play Nick Fury for free, or whoever else, but that's probably who I'm going to grab. That's really, really good. And the nice thing about it too is you can put it out there and then you can just wait to use it till whenever you want to. It lets you search your deck and discard pile. It's incredibly versatile, incredibly helpful. It's going to be very, very fun to use. Feels pretty much like an auto include. It only costs 1. You can only have 1 anyway, so you might as well grab it. It's pretty much always going to be useful. We get the protection one here, also costs 1, establish perimeter. So I think the theme of this one is really cool. That you're establishing a perimeter and then you give each identity a tough status card. So you've established your perimeter, everybody is a little bit more well protected. And so you get that warning of the tough blocking your next damage. I just love this. And again, this goes back to something with the Lord of the Rings, the player side quests. The theme of those was incredible as well. And it just felt really cool that you were going on your own little mission off to the side. You got some amazing benefits. I'm thrilled to have them here. But what's interesting is they didn't just bring in the side quest mechanic. They also have the victory display mechanic that also got added later. And Cable is kind of a mix of a few different Lord of the Rings heroes that wanted to play the player side quest, but also benefited from the victory display. And I can remember Caleb saying when he designed that, it was one of his favorite things that he had put into Lord of the Rings. So I think it's really funny that he was quick to bring it into this game when he was able to, because I know he loves this mechanism. And for the record, so did I. It's really fun. We'll take a look at one of my favorite new cards, because if you watch my stuff, you know I love this kind of stuff. 0 cost event, Body Slide. Action, change form. Each other player may change to the form you are in. So for a 0 cost event, you can just flip to alter ego, and then if you want, you can flip back to hero on the same turn. And if you're playing multiplayer, it's just nuts that everybody could flip down to alter ego. It's an action, so even if you're not the first player, you could play this. Everybody flips down, gets benefits from their alter ego supports, abilities, and stuff like that. You don't have to use this to go to alter ego, but that's often how these cards are best used. That way you can avoid the villain scheming. You flip down, flip back up. So cool. I hope he has a couple of these. It's going to be incredibly useful, especially with all of those basic supports that we looked at earlier that support mutants. You know, you got to be an alter ego to use those. It's going to make it very, very easy to flip down, use mutant education. Here, we'll take a look at it again real quick. You know, use this card right here. Shuffle a couple of his incredibly powerful hero cards back into his deck, and then get right back to the action. It's going to be so nice. So that card's awesome. We get Precognition, 0 cost event. Hero action, look at the top X cards of the encounter deck, where X is the number of side schemes in the victory display. You may discard one of those and put the rest back in any order. So this card's a bit of a slow burn. You see this in your opening hand. It's not going to do much. But the article mentions that the longer the game goes on, the more powerful the cards like this become. And that is just speaking my language. I like the games to last a little while. I like to take my time and build up my hero. So the idea of not only trying to build up on my upgrades and supports, but now I'm also trying to build up side schemes in the victory display. My games are just going to take that much longer because I'm going to enjoy taking my time doing these things, but it's going to make his cards so strong. He's going to be so powerful. And anytime you can scry the encounter deck, it's just so helpful. And the fact that it lets you rearrange them, hugely beneficial, especially again in solo play. He just feels designed for solo play. This will still be useful in multiplayer, but less so, just because you're going to get through those cards so quickly. But in solo, you could set up, your next 2 or 3 turns, maybe, if you get enough side schemes in the victory display. Now, as it stands now, it looks like we're going to have the one that he comes up with, assuming he only has one in his kit, and then there's probably going to be one for each aspect. We didn't see an aggression one, but you'll see that we did for the other 3 aspects, and maybe there will be a basic one. So hypothetically, there could be 6 at the most, I would guess, right now, maybe in this cycle. That's kind of how it was in Lord of the Rings too. They introduced them they rolled them out very slowly. So we'll see, but hypothetically, maybe he can get 6 into the victory display. So you're looking at 6 cards. I kind of wish this was X+1, but it's already pretty strong, so probably shouldn't complain too much. But he could hypothetically look at 6 cards. So in solo, you're basically setting up your next 3 rounds, give or take. It's pretty awesome. He has Mind Scan. Here's his thwarting card, 2-cost event, removes 3 threat from a scheme, remove 1 additional threat from that scheme for each side scheme in the victory display. Now here we're starting to see the Marvel Champions formula, where whatever your gimmick is, you've got a 2-cost event that removes 3 threat and then does something better, or whatever your gimmick does. So he's definitely following that pattern, but it has some very helpful traits. It's a psionic and a superpower and a thwart. So there are many ways to reduce the cost of this, which is very nice. So 2 for 3 by itself is not all that great, but you could easily get it for cheaper. Plus it's going to do better as the game goes on. Very similarly, we see his 3-cost event, Telekinetic Blast. Here's his big attack card, attack psionic superpower, so easy to discount. Deal 6 damage to an enemy, deal 1 additional to that enemy for each side scheme in the victory display. Now this one I find is just okay. You've got to get 2 side schemes in the victory display before it's even a swinging web kick. So later in the game, when this is doing 9, 10, 11 damage maybe, that's great, but it's probably going to take a little while for that to be the case. So while he definitely feels strong, his events seem pretty balanced in that they don't start out very good. You've got to do some work to get them up to just normal efficiency. The thwart one, 2 for 3 is not a great hero card. And then even getting 1 side scheme in the victory display, you're looking at 2 for 4. So now it's a for justice. You basically need to get 2 side schemes in the victory display before these cards start getting decent to good. Now you're going to start with the 1, so you're pretty much all but guaranteed to get that. I think every Cable game is going to start with you thwarting your main side scheme as quickly as you can. So that's going to bump these up. You can kind of assume that these are going to be 1 higher, but even then 3 for 7 is still not great. So you definitely have to do the side scheme thing with him. Next up is Professor, a 1-cost unique support. Alter ego action, exhaust Professor, choose to either draw 1 card or search your deck and discard pile for a player side scheme and add it to your hand. So here we see if you can get this out early, it's going to be very easy for you to get your player side schemes out and just get them onto the table. And I find it interesting, the flavor text here says, "I'm sorry, Wade, I'm afraid I can't do that." A reference to 2001, A Space Odyssey, and he's speaking to Deadpool. So, this is a Cable card, but even the flavor text that refers to Deadpool is somewhat breaking the 4th wall. So that's amusing. Yeah, really excited about this card. And it's nice once you dig them all out, then you can still use it to draw cards. So it's just very helpful. We have this 1-cost Forced Amnesia upgrade. Hero response, after a non-permanent side scheme is defeated, add Forced Amnesia and that side scheme to the victory display. So it's a way to add one of the enemy's side schemes to the victory display, getting it out of the encounter deck if it's super annoying, but also boosting Cable's cards by that 1 more. I don't mean to keep harping on this, but these are the exact same cards that came with the Lord of the Rings hero that did this exact same thing that Cable does. So it's just really funny to me to see that, but it's not unwelcome by any means. This is really cool. It makes me really hope we see some of my other favorite Lord of the Rings mechanisms down the road. Come on, contracts. So that is all of Cable's cards. And as always, we can safely assume we haven't seen all of them. We didn't see any kind of weapon upgrade. He's probably got a gun. He's kind of carries a big gun around. So wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of attack upgrade that probably does damage equal to the number of side schemes in the victory display. He seems very tightly designed in that way. You know, some heroes lean into their mechanics super, super hard, which has definitely been more common recently. And other heroes, you know, it's not quite as tight. He seems very tightly designed in that everything revolves around that side scheme thing. So he is somewhat limited in that way, I suppose. If you wanted to find a way to criticize him, you know, you're always going to include probably one of each of the player side schemes that we're going to get. And then, you know, if we end up with 2 of each for each aspect, you know, that's a lot you're probably going to want to be putting in his deck. But because he exists, that limits the number of side schemes they're probably going to make, just because, you know, other players can play him too. So if there are just a ton of differently named, even though they're unique, if there are a ton of differently named player side schemes that can just boost Cable to insane levels, I'd be surprised if they print too many of them. Yeah, incredibly, incredibly excited. One thing that we didn't see here, and we don't see it with Domino either, is no stun or confuse, which is interesting. Definitely been a lot of that going around lately, and it doesn't look like there's any, at least not on the cards that we've seen. So it'll be interesting to see if they have any of those, maybe that just haven't been revealed yet. Now he comes as leadership, and he's going to play very well in leadership just because he wants the thwarting, and obviously justice is going to be super, super good for him as well. But he's just so well-rounded with his stats and his ability to ready that it almost doesn't matter what aspect he's going to play, because he himself is going to be able to take care of business so well, and then just whatever kind of deck you want to build for him is going to be really good. So we get Caliban. Really cool to see some of these X-Force characters that maybe aren't as well known by people. 3-cost ally, 1 thwart, 2 attack with 3 health. After he enters play, you discard cards from the top of your deck until an X-Factor, X-Force, or X-Men ally is discarded. Add that ally to your hand. So comes into play, and he's going to let you go find another ally. It's going to be just really nice. I love these leadership cards that go and find another card for you. That's just always really fun to play a card and immediately get a card back. It's cool that it goes after X-Factor right now. I think that's only multiple man. I don't know if this means that we will get a whole X-Factor wave. I'm guessing not, because it seems like there are still a lot of mainline X-Men that we haven't seen, though many of them were in X-Factor. My guess is this just means we're going to see more X-Factor allies, and that's likely how they'll mostly be represented. But either way, it's cool that he's not limited to just one of the teams. So if you want to definitely stick to your theme of getting the mutants into your decks, he's going to go find anybody for you. So he seems pretty decent. Then we get Phantom X, a character I'm a huge fan of. He's just so cool. 4 cost for 1 thwart, 1 attack, and 3 health. Doesn't seem great. He is psionic, which is nice, and X-Force. After Phantom X enters play, search your deck and discard pile for Eva and put it into play. And I just got done saying I love cards that go find other cards for you. So he himself isn't doing too much, and 4 is a lot, but you also get this free 0-cost support that comes into play. She's only in play, well, she's a, you know, robot, but it seems presented as female. Anyway, you exhaust her, choose to remove a threat from a scheme, deal 1 damage to an enemy, or heal 1 damage from Phantom X. So just incredibly, incredibly useful. You know, as a solo player, anything that provides versatility just makes me really happy. I don't play a lot of 4-cost allies, though I seem to play them more in leadership, I suppose. But there are, you know, ways to discount them, and you get so much benefit. He's only doing a little bit, but Eva is also helping. So you've got basically Phantom X pinging things. You've got Eva pinging things. It's just very, very useful. Almost a mini multi-gun. Just so good. And if you want to, you could add some upgrades to Phantom X and then just keep healing him. So there's just a lot of variety here, a lot of versatility, different ways you could play. Very, very excited about these cards. Mission planning, 2-cost event. Play only if there's a side scheme in the victory display. Until the end of the phase, allies you control do not take consequential damage. This card seems incredibly expensive to me for what it's doing, basically allowing your allies to get 1 extra activation. Now, if you build up a huge board, you've got a Triskelion, you've got 4 allies in play that are all, you know, hitting pretty hard. You can get some value from this, but it doesn't seem worth it to me. I'm not in love with this one, but I could be missing something too. It's very possible. It doesn't have any traits, so there's no way to discount it. You can't even play it till later in the game. I'm not sure about this one. We get the Uncanny X-Force. The team cards are so cool. 2-cost support. You only have 1. If each of your characters has the X-Force trait, each ally you control gets +1 thwart and takes -1 consequential damage after thwarting a side scheme. So these guys are all about getting their missions accomplished, and this is going to make it that much easier using your allies to thwart down the side schemes, just getting them in the victory display quickly, but you're going to be able to keep your allies in play. Definitely going to be worth just getting +1 thwart to all of your allies. I'm really hoping they do get some kind of support. I don't know that we need to see as many supports as we saw in the last wave. Not that I don't like those cards, but they do take up a lot of space. But we're only going to get 6 X-Force members, and they can already use all the mutant stuff. So I'm guessing we'll probably only get maybe a couple gray supports, but I'm hoping we do get something that allows them to have an extra ally on the board and maybe provides, some other kind of benefit. So definitely a cool card there. And everybody can be happy that we finally have a Deadpool you can play, though I think we'll be getting another one relatively shortly after this box. 3-cost ally, 2 thwart, 2 attack with 3 health, so very, very solid. He's mercenary in X-Force. When he would be defeated by consequential damage, heal 3 damage from him instead. Add an acceleration token to the main scheme. So this might be a clue as to what his hero is going to be like. Very strong, but doing annoying things to make life harder as well, because he's just reckless and goofy and foolish. So what's interesting about this is you really never have to use this ability. You could just use him twice and block with him. So you get perfectly good value out of him that way. But if it's later in the game and you want to keep him in play, or if you want to build him up and just deal with the acceleration tokens, these guys are very good at thwarting if you're playing them in leadership with the Uncanny X-Force card. So you could probably handle that extra threat, and it wouldn't be hard to get him up to 3-4 attack, things like that. So he's pretty solid. I think he'll see a lot of play. And I think that is it for the Cable cards. And now we come to the star of the show. If I sounded incredibly positive on Cable, it's because I am. He looks awesome. He looks strong. He looks like he's going to work super well in solo. Just everything I like in a hero. But Domino, if you happen to remember my 50th video where I did a bunch of top 5 lists, one of the lists was the top 5 heroes I was looking forward to seeing because I was curious how they were going to do their powers. And Domino was on that list. And I am not disappointed with how they handled her luck manipulation powers. I was really, really curious to see what that was going to look like. And if I had given it 2 thoughts, I probably would have realized it's going to look a lot like Scarlet Witch, who is one of my favorite heroes. So it's no surprise to me that Domino is also going to be one of my favorite heroes because she looks exactly like Scarlet Witch, but in a different way, but in a similarly fun way. But first, we're going to take a look at her alter ego size. So she's only got 9 hit points and 3 recovery, so she's a little squishier than Cable. But her alter ego ability is incredible. Action, choose a card in your hand, swap that card with the top card of your discard pile. Limit once per round. It cannot be overstated how powerful, how useful this is going to be. At the very least, you'll be able to get a double resource back in your hand. Now, it doesn't add an extra card to your hand. A lot of people's alter ego abilities, will net you a positive +1 card to your hand. This is just swapping a card, but the ability to get a double resource back, use a double to play a support or an ally or something, just get it on the table and then immediately swap it with something you're not going to play and put that double right back in your hand. That's going to be great. Plus, you're going to see some cards she has in her kit that you're really going to want to swap back into your hand. But just the ability to grab potentially any of her powerful hero cards, or if you're trying to set up certain combos and you can get the card on top of your discard pile, it is, of course, a bit limited in that it is only the top card of your discard pile, but there are going to be ways to make it be what you want it to be. And just the thing I like about it is that it is limited, so it's going to require careful play. It's going to require you to make interesting choices to make this work well, and that's the kind of thing I love. So I am blown away by how cool this power is. It's somewhat similar to Wasp, and you know how much I love Wasp, where she shuffles cards back into the deck so you can get them back. Here you can just put it right back in your hand. Just this is the kind of stuff I love. So right off the bat, so excited about what Domino looks to be doing. We go into her hero form. She has the 1, 2, 3 stat line, the Spider-Man, Gambit, Ghost Spider style. That's a little bit less solo friendly, but I think we're going to find a way to make it work. Just the low thwart is always tricky, but she looks like she shouldn't have too much trouble in that department. Now, her ability, she has the X-Force trait and the Posse trait, which will matter for other cards that she comes up with. I'm not actually as familiar with her as a character, so I don't know much about the Posse. I just knew how her powers worked, and that's what had me excited to see what she was going to look like. So all the lore maybe I was offering during the Cable preview, you're not going to get any of that from Domino. I don't know who any of these people are. When counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, count each printed wild icon twice. Now that is a mouthful, but basically you're going to be playing cards that require you to discard a card off the top of your deck, and you're going to be looking at the resources on there. And if they happen to be wild, they are doubled. So immediately you're thinking of Nova, who cares about wild resources, and he has a way to, make them worth more. So she has kind of some of that flavor, but of course with Scarlet Witch too, she was discarding cards off of the encounter deck. You're going to be discarding cards off of your hero deck. And then the action is choose a card in your hand, swap that card with the top card of your deck. Limit once per round. So in hero form, she can take a card and put it on top of her deck. And in Alter Ego, she can get a card out of the discard pile and put it in her hand. So a lot of interesting variety there. And since you're going to be discarding cards off the top of your deck, being able to put one on top of your deck from your hand is a very, very useful ability, pretty much guaranteeing that you're going to be able to make one of the cards you play that round hit the way you want it to. So if we kind of take a look at some of her cards work, we'll get a clue. She has a 2-cost signature ally. This is the first of 2 that we've seen, so that's really cool. First hero to have more than one signature ally. We have a diamond back here, 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 health, but it's always nice to see 2-cost signature allies. If nothing else, she's got a cheap blocker. And she has the action Exhaust her to deal 1 damage to her and discard the top card of your deck. Deal 1 damage to each enemy for each resource icon discarded this way. So pretty much guaranteed to do at least 1 damage to every enemy, which is obviously we know through Squirrel Girl that that's always going to be useful, pinging toughs and such. Finishing off wounded minions or just dealing a little extra damage is always nice. But there's a really good chance it'll be more than 1 damage because if it's a wild icon, it's going to be 2 damage to each enemy in play. And 14 out of the 15 cards in her kit have wild resource icons. So even if you don't build a bunch into her deck, which, we're probably going to do, but even if you don't, she's got quite a few, which is also going to be really cool for her to play cards like Dropkick and the various others that require you to play in certain resource types. The fact that she has so many wilds is going to be really, really cool for that stuff. And it's also going to make it easier for her to remove villain attachments. So she's got just a lot going for her besides her normal powers. Just access to that many wild resources is very, very useful. So Diamondback seems really solid, just a nice AoE power. You can only use her a couple times probably, unless you want to go into the effort of keeping her healed, which, you could do. Next, we see her attack event, 2 costs, a good workout. Attack superpower, so Def Focus, like most of the mutants, is in play. Deal 4 damage to an enemy and discard the top card of your deck. For each resource icon discarded this way, deal 1 additional damage to that enemy. So should always be at least 2 for 5. If you hit a wild, it's 2 for 6. If you hit another card, it might be 2 for 7. So similar to what I said to Cable, this just follows the Marvel Champions formula of a nice medium-sized attack card. 2 for 4 or 5 damage and leans into their gimmick. Should work quite nicely. Next up, we get a 1-cost event, Luck Be a Lady. Also a superpower, hero action, discard the top card of your deck and count the resources on it. For each resource counted this way. So immediately I'm thinking of Hexbolt because I'm looking at 3 options and I'm discarding cards to see what I get. I'm really hoping she has a few of these, similar to how Scarlet Witch has like 4 Hexbolts. This card is so cool. If you hit a lightning resource, you heal 2 damage from a character. If you hit the mental, you remove 2 threat from a scheme. And if you hit the punch, deal 3 damage to an enemy. And yes, I know that's not what the resource types are called, but that's just what I call them. And then if you hit a wild, which again, you're probably going to at least a good portion of the time, you get to choose one of the above, but it's for every resource you count. So if it is wild, you're actually going to get 2 of them. And so you could be potentially healing 4 damage, removing 4 threat, dealing 6 damage, and you can mix and match if you do hit multiple resources. Absolutely incredible. And the nice thing about it is if you don't get lucky and hit a wild, it's still a pretty good trade-off. For 1 resource, you could heal 2 damage, remove 2 threat, or deal 3 damage. It's not, amazing, but it's not terrible either. So you don't feel like you totally missed out if you didn't hit a wild. But obviously, that's what you're really hoping to. You get a lot more done with this card. Now, we haven't seen a thwart event from her, so we don't know if this is the thwart event. And if it is, then she might be a little trickier to play in solo if you're relying on this. If you do hit that wild and you remove 4 threat for 1, that's plenty good for a solo hero. But if luck isn't being a lady, then you might run into a little bit of trouble with threat removal, but there's another card later that's going to help her too. But yeah, this is exactly why I like these types of characters. I love the randomness. I love the uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen. You're hoping. It creates that moment of excitement. You're going to flip that card and see what it is. Every card you play with her creates that moment of excitement. Please be another wild. Please be another wild. I'm wondering if it's going to be similar to when we thought about Nova back in the day. We were thinking, we need to pack his deck full of wilds because we want to make sure we're getting that. And then we realize when you play him, his helmet pretty much provides all of the wilds you need. Or I'm thinking also of when Ironheart was coming out and we were thinking like, I wonder if we'll be able to get to level 3 every game, or maybe it's just once in a while. And it's like, it's super easy to get to level 3. I'm wondering if she's going to be in that similar vein where it's just like, oh, we're constantly hitting wild resources and these things are triggering all the time, which will make her much stronger, but in a way that actually takes away from those moments of excitement I was just talking about. Like if it happens 50% of the time, then it's going to be exciting every time. But if it happens most of the times you miss are just going to be a feel bad. Yeah, I hope she has like 4 of these in her deck. I just want to play this card over and over again. Then she has her 2-cost upgrade, her pistol. It is restricted. Wondering if we'll get 2 of these, similar to like a Venom. She's got 2 in her hands, so I'm guessing there will be 2 of them. Exhaust the pistol, choose an enemy, and discard the top card of your deck. Deal 1 damage to that enemy for each resource icon discarded this way, and it does gain range. So again, I just keep saying it. You exhaust it, you're going to do 1 damage, maybe 2, maybe 3. And then here is a very, very important card that I think you're going to want to get out immediately, especially if you're playing solo. 2-cost upgrade, probability field, superpower. When you use a basic power, discard the top card of your deck. You get +1 to that power for this use for each resource icon discarded this way. So a lot of the time, this is going to be a +2 to your basic power. So here you could potentially be getting your thwarting up to 3, which is what you're going to want for solo. Or you could be attacking for 4, which is going to be nice. Or you could be defending for 5. So just a very, very versatile card. And it doesn't exhaust. So if you build in ways to ready her, which we haven't seen any X-Force specific ways to ready, but of course there are ways in the aspects. So depending on how you're playing her, you should be able to get at least a couple uses out of this on some turns. So that is going to be very, very cool. Yeah, I think this is going to be a card you mulligan for. You're definitely going to want this right away. Here we see a very cute support, the 1-cost Pip the Pug. I find it interesting that we already have a Pip the Troll, and now there is Pip the Pug. I'm wondering how many other Pips there are in the Marvel Universe that I wasn't aware of. It is creature traded and has an alter ego action. Exhaust Pip the Pug. Put 1 Domino or Posse card from your discard pile on top of your deck. So it is leaning into that Posse trait. And we're going to see a few more of those cards. I'm wondering if there'll be too many in the aspects or if it'll mostly just be within her pack. But super, super nice, because here's where the manipulation gets really, really fun. So you exhaust him to put one of her cards or a Posse card, if that's something you're playing into, from your discard pile on top of your deck, which could expose a different card that maybe you want to add to your hand because you're in alter ego, or you could use a card as a resource to pay for something, use him to put it back on top to set up the next turn. Like, there are going to be so many fun plays with Pip that it just, the things that add to why she's going to be fun to play. You're going to make sure you do things in a careful order. You're going to make sure you're discarding the cards that you're using for resources in a certain order. You know, you're not allowed to manipulate your discard pile, but you can play the resource cards in any order you want to that you're discarding to pay for things. So just going to be a really, really interesting way to play, and probably tricky and easy to play badly or miss out on cooler plays that maybe you just didn't see. And I really, really enjoy heroes like that. So big fan of Pip. And then we finally get our Shawarma in a hero deck. Ever since we got the Mad Titan Shadow and we saw that Shawarma card, I've been so tempted to just use that in decks. I've never done it. I think it would be really fun just as a house rule to include that, but I've never done it. But man, oh man, does this make her fun to play just instantly knowing she's got a triple resource in her deck. You know, we've got the triple lightning with Captain Marvel. We got the triple punch with Hulk. I have no doubt we're going to get a triple mental when we get Mr. Fantastic. But I never thought I'd see one of each from somebody, and it just never would have occurred to me that it'd be Domino. But like so many of the heroes, when they actually show what they do, it just seems so obvious. It's like, oh, of course this is what Domino does. It just makes perfect sense. But here we have this triple resource, one of each. It's going to be so useful for so many things. And after this card is discarded from the top of your deck, shuffle it back into your deck. So it doesn't have wild, but it is 3 resources. So when you're triggering your various effects, this is going to be a +3 to damage to, you know, whatever it is, the card you're using, +3 to a basic stat. And then it gets shuffled back in. So you could theoretically hit this over and over and over again. And if it does end up in your discard pile because you spend it as resources to pay for a nice expensive card, which is obviously another nice way to use this card, you can use Pip to put it back on top, or you can swap it back into your hand with her alter ego power. It's going to be so much fun. You're going to be hunting this card down every time you play her. It's kind of like Ticket to the Multiverse with Gwen. You want to see that card early because you have ways of putting it back in your deck, using it over and over again. Same thing with Genius, with Wasp. You want to get it early, shuffle it back in. This is even better than those because it's a triple resource, one of each. When you use it to hit the Luck Be a Lady, you're going to get one of each of those effects. It's just, it's so awesome. I'm so hyped for Domino. She looks incredibly fun. And I think strong, this stuff is a little bit unreliable, but so is Scarlet Witch's powers, and she's incredibly strong. So I think she's going to be really, really solid and just a super duper fun hero to play. And one last thing I want to mention about this, and we're going to see it with a different card here soon too. I talked a lot about Lord of the Rings abilities in the cable talk, and this is yet another one pulled in. The dwarves like to discard cards off the top of their decks, and then you get all kinds of benefits from them, or some cards come into play for free, or just if they get discarded off the top of your deck, something cool happens, which is just an incredibly fun mechanism. So we're just seeing so much of the best of Lord of the Rings in this one box. It's awesome. So that's the end of the Domino cards. Just amazing, just blown away. Both of these heroes. A lot of times we get these previews for the campaign boxes and you see two heroes and you're immediately drawn to one over the other. And I am more drawn to Domino than Cable, but maybe not as much as some of the other boxes. Like, they are both so cool. It's just amazing every time we see new cards. I know we've been waiting a long time to see these cards, and I have been feeling that with you. But man, it was worth the wait. And they told us that a while back, that there's more coming and it will be worth the wait. And it's incredible. There's nothing disappointing here. Maybe the odd card or two that's kind of like, but as far as the heroes themselves, just unbelievably fun. They're going to be unbelievably fun. Now, Domino comes in Justice. So we're going to take a look at a few Justice cards here. We have a 3-cost Wolfsbane. Really cool that we're getting her. 2 thwart, 1 attack with 3 health. And her ability is after she thwarts, you name a card type, discard the top card of your deck, and if it is of the name type, you may add it to your hand. So Cosmo-esque, but it actually gives you card draw. It's unbelievable. This is so good. Obviously, especially with Domino, who can manipulate the top of her deck by swapping cards with her hero ability. Pretty much a guaranteed card draw, but this is going to be useful in a lot of decks. You're going to want to be finding ways to know what's coming. Global Logistics might be worth playing along with Rain here. Just such a nice way. We're always looking for new things to be added to Justice because it's been really boring for a long time. I think this is a really exciting new ally. 2 thwart with 3 health is really, really good. And she's going to be paying for herself. Getting cards back into your hands is going to be awesome. We see this Team Investigation. Okay, my enthusiasm is going to dip down some here. We have a 2 per player cost as Alliance, so it is cool to bringing those back. Probably going to get another round of those in this cycle. I imagine we'll get one of each. So anybody can help pay for these in a multiplayer game. And it is remove 3 threat per player from a side scheme. So if you take the Alliance out of this, this is a 2-cost card that removes 3 threat from a side scheme. That's pretty awful. That it's limited to just side schemes and it's not really removing above average threat. The fact that it can be paid for by multiple players does help. So say you're playing a 2-player game, this costs 4 and removes 6 threat from a side scheme. It's still limited because you have to have a specific target. But the fact the other player can help pay for it. I'm mostly a solo player, but I have been in games where Alliance cards were in play, and it was fun having those conversations. Who can help pay for, I have an extra card I'm not going to be able to play anyway. I can chip it in. I like that aspect of it. But to me, this feels like it should have been costed a little bit differently. It doesn't really feel like you're getting that much benefit out of this, and there's plenty of good Justice cards that remove threat. I would have loved to have seen a Justice Alliance card that did something more interesting than just remove threat. We already had Problem Solvers that removes like 1 million threat in a 4-player game, potentially. So I find this card incredibly boring. I would have loved to have seen a completely different effect than just yet another yellow event that removes threat. So many of those. Justice needs something cool. So this card is incredibly disappointing to me, actually. But one card out of a ton of good ones. So even if I'm wrong about the math and it's super efficient, I don't even care. It's just boring. Okay, well, we do get a cool card here. So stepping back up, 0 cost player side scheme. Love that. It is unique. When defeated, each player may discard 1 non-elite minion from play. It's 4 threat per player, so it's a little bit higher than the others, but it's Justice, so that makes sense. And we have a Justice card that just kills a minion in front of everybody. Now, it's non-elite, but most of the minions are non-elite. So this is a good card. This is exciting. I think you're going to see this similar to what I said about the Justice or the Leadership one. You're going to see this in a lot of Justice decks. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't run this. 0 cost to basically take out a 3, 4, 5 health minion. Maybe more. Happens to be a beefy one that isn't elite. It's just really, really good. So this is a cool card. I like that it's stepping outside of the Justice boundaries. Finally, a card that's not just removing threat. I know We don't want the aspects to bleed too much to where, they're all completely all purpose, but this is nice. I like this card a lot. Got a few more here. Well, one less because we just have a reprint of Overwatch, so nothing too exciting there. Great card, but, already got it. So here we see another Domino card, which is interesting. They jumped back into Domino's cards. The first time I read the article, I thought this was a basic card for the longest time. It's so weird that they jump back into the Domino cards here. But 3 costs, signature ally, 1 thwart, 1 attack, outlaw, and posse traded. She has toughness, which is awesome. And when she attacks, you discard the top card of your deck. She gets +1 for each attack. For this attack for each resource icon. So the other one, Diamondback, was damaging everybody, and this one is doing 1 big attack. So it would have been nice if one of these had been a little bit more thwart oriented instead of damage oriented, but I'm guessing that's probably just a character thing. Maybe that's Domino is more attacky. Like I said, I don't really know the character. I just knew she had cool powers. So, but really solid. Hero signature allies are always good, better than the average, and to have more than one, I'd love to see a hero have a few of them just because they're super strong, they're going to be good. So everything about her kit is so exciting. Here we get a basic ally that is posse traded, so maybe there are a few. 3 cost, 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health, so not super exciting yet. But after she is discarded from the top of your deck, put her into play under your control. So really good chance you're going to hit this and you're just going to get a free 1/1 ally. Can't complain about that. That's really nice. Hopefully this will be the last time I mention Lord of the Rings, but there is a very similar ally in that game. They're super wimpy, but when you get them for free, it's like, I'll take it. It's so nice. The only thing that would have made this better is if she had the wild icon, so she could have also doubled up on you, but hey, not going to complain about a free ally. White Fox is super cool. And I'm particularly drawn to the art. I just think she looks really neat. And the last card, we're getting this 2-cost event called the Posse. It is posse traded. You only can have 1 in your deck. So think kind of like a Go for Champions type thing. Play only if you control at least 3 characters with a posse trait, where you're guaranteed to have access to those because Domino has 2 herself plus herself. And it says hero action, heal 1 damage from each posse character and ready them. So it's nice just to get that ready for Domino because we talked earlier about the probability field. It doesn't require it to exhaust, so you'll be able to get an extra use out of that. Healing in hero form is always great. And then we take a look at like Outlaw here is going to be able to attack and mill another card. And I'm just going to run back to Diamondback real quick. You're going to be able to use her again to do an AoE damage type attack, and it's going to heal her, so she's going to be able to do that again without dying. So very, very good. I don't see any reason why you're not always going to run that in the deck. That's going to be so good. So the big thing really, I guess, for Domino is just we haven't seen an actual thwart event. So I'm really hoping she's got, 2 for remove 3 threat and discard the top card, remove extra threat, blah, blah, blah. I'd be really surprised if she doesn't have that. And I'm really hoping there's something to either mitigate or profit from the fact that she's going to run through her deck very, very quickly. You're going to be getting a lot of extra encounter cards with Domino, which is fine. I think that plays into her theme. She appears to be reckless, similar to how Scarlet Witch is chewing through the encounter deck and getting the extra acceleration tokens, which is, somewhat of a balancing factor to her power. Domino seems like she's going to be really strong, so getting an extra encounter card more quickly than other heroes will, and probably more often. I usually only get 1 deck pass in a solo game, maybe 2 if I'm really taking my time. I can see Domino going 3 or 4 times because it seems like every card you play is milling a card. So you're only going to see half your deck every deck pass because half of it's going to end up in your discard pile. So I'm hoping she has some kind of Soul World type card that maybe rewards her for running through her deck, or maybe even a card that shuffles cards back in. I definitely would recommend a Mutant Education. 3 of these would not go amiss in her deck, getting 6 cards back in. I think is going to be really, really nice putting all those powerful wild icons back in her deck. This just feels like a must-have. Just incredibly, incredibly powerful and exciting. So looking forward to this. So speaking of that, and this is the last thing, this video went a lot longer than I meant it to, but just so excited about these cards, I wanted my chance to talk about them. It tells us here at the bottom that it's not coming out till August. And then we see in the, if you go to the buy it now, it's August 18th is the date. So we're looking at another 131 days. We waited 140 days for our next preview, and then it's another 131 days until this box comes out. And I'm seeing a lot of chatter online, and I feel it too. That's a long time. You know, we have been trained to expect a new product every month, and for the longest time, that was the case. You know, I was buying Lord of the Rings in 2011 and have spent the last 12 years of my life almost getting a product a month from Fantasy Flight Games, or 2 or 3 when I was playing all 3 of the co-op LCGs. And now we're going, you know, just months in between releases, and it's a little disappointing. I want to try to put a positive spin on it because that's me, but I can't deny it. That's rough. It's a long time to wait. Now it looks awesome and it's going to be worth the wait. And, you know, if we're being honest, we have 43 heroes and 36 other villains to play. So we have things to do. But I'm hoping that this is all just part of the reset. You know, we had to wait a long time for the article. They said there was some, you know, internal shifting around. They had to get Tony up to speed, and he was involved in this, and it looks like he did a great job. We already know he did a great job with Mojo. So I'm hoping, you know, this comes out at Gen Con, and then we're back on schedule. We got our 2 packs every 2 months, which, to be honest, I don't even love that. I much prefer 1 a month, but I know that that's just a logistics thing. It makes their life easier. So I don't blame them, but I don't love it. But, you know, hang in there. I'm right there with you. I know this is a long time to wait, and I know I and probably the other content creators as well are going to be doing everything we can to keep everybody happy and entertained during the long wait. So it's going to be here before you know it, and we're going to have awesome stuff to play. Now, I was going to go over the villains, but this video went really long. They look cool. I won't go into it. Nelson did a video about the villains, and the other previews talked about them as well. So definitely check those out. I'll actually link them in the description. But I'm definitely very excited about them. But I'm not going to get into them here just because this took a really long time, and you've already probably watched 5 of these videos. So the last thing we're going to go on here is we have this very cool image previewing the next 4 heroes, and people have really probably nailed these down. There's been a ton of speculation. Down here in the bottom right, this has got to be Deadpool, right? He's eating some sort of taco type item. He's breaking the frame here. You know, he's sort of breaking the fourth wall as it is. So that's almost definitely Deadpool. Over here, I'm fairly certain this is X-23. She's got something stuck to her claw. I'm thinking this is Nightcrawler. Looks like there's a tail. We've seen him in a trench coat. That looks like his hair. I'm definitely calling Nightcrawler on this one. I'm really hoping for it. Heard Multiple Man, which, I mean, I would love to see Jamie, but X-Force might not be the place for him. And Angel also wears a trench coat to hide his wings, but I don't know, Nightcrawler's so much cooler. So I'm really hoping for Nightcrawler. And then finally, you know, we were definitely expecting to see Psylocke in an X-Force wave, but this just doesn't look like Psylocke to me. So my guess is Siren. That's kind of who I'm putting out there. So that's my picks for the wave: X-23, Nightcrawler, Siren, and Deadpool. Siren and Deadpool also had a romantic relationship, wanted a lot of comics together. So that makes a lot of sense too. So I know it's going to be a long time till we get it, but it is going to be so awesome. I hope you're excited. I hope you stay excited. I'm going to do my best to keep you excited. And we are going to look forward to this together. Thank you so much for joining me. If you did watch a few of these other ones, thank you for watching mine. I know you probably didn't hear anything you hadn't already heard, but I couldn't not talk about this stuff. It's just so cool. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you'll like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I look forward to seeing you next time we get up in game. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.